Ellen, welcome to Future Speak.
She said, my children don't let me take a shower. And I said, well, what if you told them you needed a shower and what would they like to do while you're doing the shower? And it's the same with our employees, right? You just give them a task, but it's all on your shoulders. If you say, this is my job, this is yours, how would you like to do that? It's a very different dynamic that's created.
It's wonderful to have you here. I know that we've got mutual friends who've introduced us, and it's been great to really learn more about you and your journey, and actually the importance of well-being in our society today, and the importance that it's going to play moving forward. You said in a talk recently you're a believer in walking the talk. And that really resonated from what little I know of you. I really felt that. So rather than my half-heartedly introduce you and not doing a very good job, I'd love you to introduce you to everyone today.
Thank you so much, Sam. It's an honor to be here with you. I will introduce myself through exactly that, through walking the talk. So I was born and raised in the United States, educated in finance and economics. I did a year abroad in Italy, Rome, Italy. I've just gone back for a lovely weekend myself, and it's was a turning point in my life. I fell in love with Europe. I fell in love with multicultural worlds. And when I returned to the United States, I decided to pivot and come back to Europe to learn a foreign language, met my husband, and lived happily ever after. I've been in Europe, in Switzerland, for 37 years. So obviously, with an education in finance and economics, I began my career in finance and economics. And at one point, when we started having our family and all, I felt sort of a misalignment. I felt that I wasn't walking my talk. I no longer had that same feeling that I had as a management consultant, future partner. My priorities were now to be divided between my family and my working life. So I pivoted to walk the talk. I pivoted through changing my own lifestyle. I lost significant weight, changed my lifestyle. And at that point, career-wise, I took on a role at Weight Watchers at work. I was responsible for bringing Weight Watchers and weight management into the workplace. So that was really in line. You can see I was walking my talk. It was in line with what I had done. I was helping like-minded professionals change their lifestyle. In that case, it was weight management, to be able to be more in tune with themselves and more productive in the workplace. And that lasted for almost 10 years. I did it for 9 years. And again, after 9 years, there was some kind of a misalignment. I felt that weight management wasn't enough, Sam. I knew people needed more. There was stress, there were issues of sedentarity, of resilience, burnout, and weight management alone wasn't enough. So I pivoted to walk my talk. And at that point, I began my journey as a health and wellness coach and a consultant in workplace well-being. Upped my training, did my ICF training. In fact, today I'm global leader of all of the health and wellness coaches at ICF. And I still am working in the workplace, but holistically. Nutrition, activity, sleep, tech life balance, and most of all, I'm sure we'll explore this more, walking the talk from the top to the bottom of the organization.
I love that. And I'm going to dive straight into that bit. What does that mean for you when organizations actually walk the talk?
Yeah, it's very clear in my mind. First of all, we have huge issues today, whether we want to call it quiet quitting, the great resignation, whatever we want to call it. We have never had as much attrition in the workplace as we do today. The major reasons for that are misalignments. People, first of all, are uncomfortable. There's something that's misaligned. We saw a lot of that during the COVID time. And people are leaving. They're re-identifying, they're reconnecting with their values, with their purpose, and what really matters to them in life. So that's the first place. Individuals are doing the same, The same kind of realignment that I did through my career, that I resumed as I sort of presented myself. But even further than that, I believe that the only way we can promote well-being in the workplace, which will give us the retention and the attraction that we need to have a stable workforce, is that the leadership walk the talk. Again, take something simple like sending emails at midnight and on weekends. If it's in policy that it's not done, but every leader does it, there's a misalignment. If they say that people should be managing, taking their breaks, but if they don't take a break, I see this. This is what I hear every day, Sam. So I believe that any effort that we make in terms of workplace well-being, we need to start at the top. And it's by modeling and by example that the rest of the organization will follow.
And I hear you. And here's an interesting question. How do we get these leaders out of the mindset of, I'm the leader, I have to lead by example, and that sense, that feeling of, well, I've got to do these hours because it's all on me.
Yeah, it is. It's very interesting you should ask that question, because I was coaching a leader earlier today. The first thing is it's when I promote the kind of coaching that I do and the kind of consulting, because I still wear two hats, and I always start by coaching the leaders. And one of the biggest areas that shows up within week 1 or week 2 of coaching together is setting boundaries. Is not today. I'll take the example today. You'll get it right away. I was working with someone that was saying, okay, I want to do this and I'm going to set my boundary. I'm going to tell them that I'm going to do this. And during that time, this is what they can do. We discussed a little bit and I said, I'm just curious. What would happen if instead of you telling them what they needed to do, if you didn't ask them, what do they propose? How do they see doing this when you're setting up a boundary and you're not doing it for them? Rather than telling them what they're going to do in the meantime, if you flipped it, you remove the responsibility from your shoulder and you empower them. And the leader sat back and said, I never thought of that. And I said, does it sound harder or easier? And they said, easier. And I said, does that make your load easier or greater? And they said, easier. So it's a mindset. And we work in that. That's what coaching is all about, isn't it? Isn't it, Sam? What do you think of that?
I agree with you. And I think in my world where we are, as business coaches, our reality is we start with asking those difficult questions in many instances to help unblock their challenges. And I think you referred to it before. We then flip slightly and it dependent on the client into a consultative and a collaborative approach. Because in many instances, particularly when we're dealing with the small businesses, what we're finding with them is they generally don't know how to do the next step. And they get frustrated if we're trying to create the insight, because it's like a watering can, right? They've got all these options to go through and all these lanes for that water to flow and that next step to flow, but they're not sure where to go next. So we get to a point where we have a blend, but you're right, that mindset piece, first and foremost, that's the most exciting piece where you then can go on to create the impact from that.
And it removes, because your original question was, they feel it's their responsibility. It's like parent. You feel like you need to do it all. I was working with a leader who said, with my children, full-time job, employees, I don't have time to take a shower. And we got talking about that. And then she said, we discussed with this. She said, my children don't let me take a shower. And I said, well, what if you told them you needed a shower? And what would they like to do while you're doing the shower? Because she was talking about just putting them in front of a video. And I said, and it's the same with our employees, right? You just give them a task, but it's all on your shoulders. If you say, this is my job, this is yours, how would you like to do that? It's a very different dynamic that's created.
It is. And one thing that I'd love to discuss with you, having seen it recently and again talked about it at an event recently that I attended, Accenture have produced a report, and in that report, they're saying that C-suite 90% of C-suite leaders are finding it hard, in fact, struggling to keep up with the amount of change that's going on. They are saying they can't keep up. Now, there's a well-being aspect to them, and therefore their senior leadership and the line managers and the teams and the everything else under that creates that culture of fear. How does that resonate with you, and what are you seeing in that regard when we look at change versus well-being?
It's a very interesting question, change versus well-being, because you had a few things there. You talked about change and you talked about fear. I have to be honest, speaking about change, I don't think there's more change than we've had in the past. I think we're equipped differently to deal with the change. I think we've always had constant change. I remember the beginning of our careers, they were reorganizing companies every day and changing things every day. So I don't actually think we have more change. And I'll play another devil's advocate here. People say we're more stressed than ever. I don't really believe that, because when I think about caveman and cavewoman, I think they were probably extremely stressed every day for survival. So I actually don't believe that we are more stressed or there's more change. What I do think is I think that people, many, many leaders have lost the balance. They have lost the capacity to actually pull back and get balance, because we are in a 24/7 on dynamic, thanks to or because of the online presence. There's less downtime. So what I do believe, Sam, is I believe that we purposefully, in order to maintain our resilience, we need to create downtime. Go back to cavemen. This is coming very spontaneously, by the way. Caveman would go to sleep. He would protect himself, close the cave, and go to sleep in safety and turn off, so that when he woke up, he was complete, or she was completely resilient and ready. This is something that I believe online presence has falsified for the human beings. So that's why I believe what we need to relearn is how to disconnect to create our own personal balance, so that we've got the resilience to manage change. We're made to manage change. Nobody ever said life wasn't going to be full of change. It's boring not to have change, but we need to be able to roll with it. I'm going to share one more thing, and I would love your opinion on this. Last year, I invented a word, Sam. The word is transilience. Transilience. What do you think that word means? Completely invented.
Oh gosh, transilience. So I'm thinking it's constant change. So the resilience through that perpetual change.
Yes, exactly. It's through it, because resilience, we always say it's bouncing back after. Resilience is being able to return to the original shape of the elastic. And for me, it's exactly that, Sam, because there will be all the change, and then you have the burnout, and then they have to come back. No. Let's trudge through. Let's get through it, bouncing up and down with everyday change, and it becomes more fluid. So transilience is getting through it. Good job. See, didn't I invent a good word?
I love that.
Yeah.
And actually, here's the thing. So I've also had conversations not on any of my shows, but have we as a society just got too comfortable?
Maybe.
And therefore, there's a huge movement now, right, towards anti-fragility.
There you go.
And there's a piece about resilience, and that's taking resilience to the next level. We talk a lot about the well-being aspect and how important that is. I fundamentally believe it is. And to your point about society now being more 24/7, that's why we need to look after our own well-being. But everyone has a different way of doing it.
Absolutely. It's very individualized, very individual. completely personal.
Yeah. So there's going to be a lot of change going on around how we offer benefits to our teams.
Mm,
And actually,
love that. Hmm.
let's face it, what our teams want from a benefits provider.
Yeah, this is a really good topic, Sam, and I love what you brought up about the fragility. And there's a saying that I use, which is we want to be agile, not fragile.
Love that.
Agile, not fragile. And I think that's the place to go with this in terms of benefits. Very interesting to cross benefits with diversity, equity, and inclusion. And the reason I do that, and there's a common word to both of them, which is the word belonging. I believe that benefits today, it's become a huge challenge to actually have benefits that respond to our diverse workforce. We can talk about culture. We can talk, of course, about gender. We can also talk about race. But another big one is age. And as you know, that's really an area that I've actually written my book on. And it's an area that we work in the workplace to create this agility around age. Because in the mindset, there has been traditionally a fragility attitude to age, right? That as people age, they become more fragile and we might want them in the workplace. And we are being slapped in the face with that. This is not a new change. This has been a demographic evolution. Yeah. But it's going very, very quickly. And with the programs that I'm running today, menopause, andropause, aging workforce, 50 plus, what do we do? We're doing specific programs for 50 plus. And today I finished a 1-year program with a multinational where they actually ran a year of programming with us. Age is just a number. So fascinating. And all of this needs to be woven into our benefits package.
I love that. Tell us more about this program. I'd love to hear more as to what triggered the multinational to get in touch with you. And thank God they did, by the way.
Yeah. It was actually a very, very successful program. I get goosebumps because we finished it today. It goes around the theme of my book, which is called Wake Up, Shake Up, Thrive, How to Lift Up Your Life in Your 50s and Beyond. What happened is, again, this was one of my walk the talk pivot moments in my life. About 5 years ago, when I was in my early 50s, I recognized that, first of all, I was resonating with people of my age and my professional background, and that there was this great need that the 50 plus were the leaders. They were the people that were taking the most responsibility. They were creating their companies. They were running the companies. And they had different needs, as you said earlier, than the very younger generations in terms of training, in terms of what they wanted out of their job, their personal alignment, in terms of what they were capable of, and in terms of what they were ready for. So given that, simultaneously what happened is, and there's a very good study that was put out by Deloitte, even just for Switzerland alone, they've recognized that by 2030, we will need to import nearly 500,000 people if everybody retires at 65, because the baby boomer generation is larger than the upcoming generations. We don't have enough skilled workers coming into the workforce naturally to replace them. So we actually need to keep those skilled people in the workplace. And yet they're the first to leave because been there, done that. I know what I want out of life. I don't want this for another 20 years. Whereas if we can propose them something that's aligned with what they are doing, who they want to be with their values, etc., with their financial situation, then we can keep them in the workplace and keep them thriving in our economy. So nuts and bolts, we look at 5 dimensions of well-being for the 50 plus. Number 1, obviously the physical dimension. We look at the physical dimension because stuff shifts as of 50. You may be aware of that, Sam, for men and women. Not only does stuff shift, but all of a sudden, people take it more seriously. The stuff they took for granted when they were really young, they can no longer take for granted. They actually need to be proactive about their health and physical well-being. The second dimension that we look at is the emotional alignment. And that's that agility versus fragility. It's actually having an emotional mindset that allows you to face the change and thrive through it. Transilience, stay resilient through it. Emotion. Good news is people over 50 are emotionally more stable than the younger generations. Scientifically proven. And again, we've got exceptions in all cases, but as a rule, people become more emotionally stable with age. Number 3, we look at the intellectual dimension. Because again, 50 plus, are they still being trained? Are they still being stimulated? Are they still learning? Or are we just putting them in the garage and saying they're doing what they're doing? And individually as well, we can keep learning until we die. The neurons in our brain, the only way to keep them active, keep them well, is by stimulating them. We've got to create that stimulation. Spiritual well-being, that's about identifying with our purpose in life. Again, it changes. The purpose we have at 50 plus is not the same as it is when you're 20, 22, 23, just getting into the workforce. No judgment, no good, no bad, no worse, no better, but different. And last but not least, financially. Financially, again, I'll give one simple example here. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. I've noticed that, and statistics show that women over 50, especially in those menopause years, are struggling very often with menopause symptoms, are struggling very often with aging parents, with empty nesting, and with very significant job responsibilities. Given all of those stressors and all of those pressures on life, they often leave the workforce without considering the financial implications. That 50 is midlife today. 50 is not end of life. 50 is midlife. They still have another 30, 40, 50 years to be financially sound. We talk about upskilling in finances and being financially well, knowing where we're going in the future. So that's all of that work around the aging demographic in the workplace.
Yeah, and it's something that has been quite a hot topic actually in this series, that aging workforce piece. And I agree with you. You know, I was shocked into menopause after my previous partner died suddenly, and all the hurt and the pain and the everything else that went through that, bang, overnight, I was not only dealing with everything that went to do that, but I was also dealing with the menopause. So fast forward to 48, I'm out the other side. So I'm kind of ahead of the game and mentally stronger than I've ever been. As you were saying about a lot of women of our age, you know, I haven't hit the 50s yet, but at 47, a lot physically changed for me. And I'm still coming to terms with that. That whole mindset of, hey, I've still got my whole life in front of me. Very much so. I work harder now than I did in my 20s. And I worked at Goldman Sachs, so I knew hard work.
My daughter worked for Goldman Sachs. I know how hard you work.
Yeah.
I know how hard you work.
But here's the thing, that it's not the pressure now. It's enjoyable. It's fun. We're making a difference. We're helping people have success on their terms, not mine. And that's something wonderful, but to be able to do in the world of work right now, to be able to get WhatsApp messages from, you know, female founders who said, I've been able to take my entire family to Barbados. Thank you for your coaching. Hey, Sam, look at the car I've just brought. I've done that because of your coaching and insight. That's really precious. And to know that we still have many years ahead of us to be able to do that is something that's wonderful. We're talking a lot about that multi-generational aspect that are in the workforce and how well-being will be incorporated around that, as well as the anti-fragility piece. Where do you see this being in 10 years' time?
Yeah, that's a really good question. If we could only project the future.
Yeah.
I think what it's worth sharing is clearly the big issues in the workplace today are clearly mental well-being. Mental well-being is the number one issue. And behind the mental well-being is this lack of fidelity, faithfulness to the workplace, where people are just leaving and we're losing the we're losing the contributions and the commitment that we want from our employees. So that's what we want to maintain. And in terms of the future, I believe that well-being, as we were talking about the benefits package, actually considering all of these individuals and bringing this well-being into the workplace is no longer a nice to have. It is an absolute need to have. We've seen a huge difference, and I was one of the pioneers in Europe because I started in this area 20 years ago, where in the US it was already up and rolling. I literally was one of the founders and creators of it here in Switzerland. But today it's become common knowledge that we need to adapt working life to the employees and not vice versa. So I think that's where we're going. I think we're going in the right direction. One of the things I see happening, Sam, and I happen to be writing right now a white paper on this subject with the Global Wellness Institute, is we're bringing more health and wellness coaching into the executive space. Let me just explain what we've discovered through our global research, that coaching in the workplace, coaches like you, they're there. It's done. It is something that is very, very accepted, which it wasn't 15, 20 years ago, remember? When nobody had a coach. And it was sort of, nobody knew what a coach was. Well, we've gotten over that bump in the road. The next bump in the road is to integrate certified, globally qualified health and wellness coaches that are not dietitians, that are not gurus, but that are using this empowering coaching language so that leadership and all the way down the organization, we can walk the talk, giving us alignment with our jobs. And not only our jobs, McKinsey says it's not just the job, but with the workplace and with our lives. It's with three levels, that alignment. The job you're doing, the employer you're doing it for, and your life. And all of that needs to be reassessed regularly.
Absolutely. And, the word workplace the meaning of that is going to change, right? And there's a lot of exciting things to come. And a fun question for you. If I was to ask you your latest binge watch, be it Netflix or I'm finding other channels apply, what's been your latest binge watch, if any?
Oh, yeah, of course I have. Of course I've got my latest binge watches. But I know what the next one's going to be. So the next one's going to be The Crown because it came out today. That's going to be the next one. That's for sure. The latest one, it's really funny you should ask. My daughter worked for Goldman Sachs. My son is a Geneva-based lawyer, and they're both early career people. So I've actually been watching The Partner. It's called The Partner. I think it's called The Partner Lane or The Partner Road on Netflix. It's just been really fun to see these young professionals. And again, same thing. It's like seeing these young professionals, that was 20, 30 years ago for me, but what they're struggling for, what they're looking at in the workplace, and how they're struggling. And if she wants to get to be partner in a law firm in New York City, so you can imagine how fun it is. I find it more modern than Suits. So that's my latest binge watch.
I love that. And by the way, I was a huge fan of Suits. Loved it.
Yeah, me too at the time. But now I feel like it's old hat. So this is the partner track. It's called the partner track. That's what it's called. And I really get a kick out of it. And of course, you've got the diversity and equity and inclusion, and you have somebody that's foreign and somebody that's trans and somebody that's black and somebody that's girl and guy, and you've got all kinds of good stuff going on in there.
I love it. I love it. And I want to thank you so much for coming on today and really talking about your contribution, not only what you've been doing in terms of the workforce, but how you continue to support them and will support them as we go, we carry on and we progress through this period of significant change. And as you said, we've been going through change for the last 20 years. Are we really just putting a label on it? Is this all just a lot of hype? Right? Quite a controversial question, and maybe one that we can talk about in another series if you do me the honor of coming back.
Absolutely, Sam. Well, thank you so much for giving me the time, and I'd love to come back anytime. So thank you for the conversation.
Brilliant. Take care.
You as well.